I think what's been made popular over the years is this idea of bluntness. Often people see it as something to aspire to. They associate it, I think, with being a strong character, someone who is very blunt. And I think what's interesting there is that someone who is blunt to the point of rudeness, and at the other end, someone who maybe always acquiesces, always agrees to what's being said, even if that will make their life more difficult. Their behaviours are still very much controlled by the perceptions of others, because it's an image that's trying to be projected.
Hi, I'm Damien. Welcome to the Success Mindset YouTube channel, and I'm delighted to be joined again by Nick Barratt. Welcome, Nick.
Hi, Damien.
And Nick, as we know, so he's helped us on other videos as a behavioural analyst. And today we're going to be looking at assertiveness, which I know is an area that a lot of people might struggle with, either in their personal lives or their home life or their work lives. Sorry. And today we're going to be talking to Nick about assertiveness. So, Nick, just generally, why is assertiveness and being able to be assertive important in people's lives?
I think there are a number of reasons. I think that often we talked in one of our other sessions about stress, and one of the examples I gave actually related to someone who wasn't assertive with their boss, and the context was that the boss was asking them to do some extra pieces of work when they're already at capacity. So I think what that illustrates is that if we are not assertive, we can end up in a very practical way being in a worse situation, but also what we tend to do is then go off and berate ourselves for not saying the things that we wanted to have said, and many of us have as an underpinning value a desire to be honest and to express ourselves politely, but when the situation requires it, firmly.
And why do you think people do struggle to be assertive? Because, I've personally certainly found you tend to get one extreme or the other. You tend to get people that are almost assertive to the point of rudeness, where they can alienate people around them. Or you get people the total other end that are almost so passive, they almost become a target. And I guess there's a very, very sort of happy medium in the middle. But, why do a lot of people struggle to be assertive, Nick?
I think that if you take it right back to the principles that govern all of our behaviours, you can often think of the factors that control our behaviour as being relating to reward or punishment of some kind. And a big part of what drives human behaviour is social reward or approval, and social punishment or social embarrassment or awkwardness. So I think for a lot of people, given how they're brought up, given that many of us will instinctively, we move away from aversive stimulation of some kind. It can be an aversive thought, an unpleasant thought or feeling. It can be an unpleasant situation. So instinctively, we try to avoid those unpleasant feelings rather than experience them. And often we one of the ways in which we avoid them, in bringing it back to assertiveness, is by maybe not saying what we really feel for fear of it creating that aversive situation.
Absolutely. And and I mentioned before, you can get the other end of the spectrum where people can almost be so assertive that it almost comes across as aggression, or it can come across as aggressive. And I guess that we're here to talk about people that might be at the other end that want to become more assertive, but I think there is a fine line between being assertive and not being aggressive. And how can people judge the difference? So when they're becoming more assertive, how can people make that judgment call?
Well, I think I think judgment's a good word, because it is, there's not an easy way to objectively define what is an assertive comment. There is an element of judgment. These things will differ according to the culture. So what's considered assertive in one country may be considered rude in another. So it is something that is culturally quite sensitive. But for me, being assertive is honestly stating what you think. It's doing it in a way that isn't with some obvious behaviors that we would associate with rudeness or aggression. So it isn't with a raised voice, it isn't with an angry expression. So people talk about calmly expressing themselves. But I think it's interesting when you were talking about those two ends of the spectrum, and what I think can happen. There are lots of things that can influence our behavior, and some people they can develop almost a conceptualized self and an idealized self. And there is, I think, what's been made popular over the years is this idea of bluntness. Often people see it as something to aspire to. They associate it, I think, with being a strong character, someone who is very blunt. And I think what's interesting there is that someone who is blunt to the point of rudeness, and at the other end, someone who maybe always acquiesces, always agrees to what's being said, even if that will make their life more difficult. Their behaviors are still very much controlled by the perceptions of others, because it's an image that's trying to be projected.
And I guess if people do struggle to be assertive, but like you say, assertive in an emotionally intelligent way. So, it's not about raising your voice and shouting. It is being very much in the moment, very authentic, giving someone constructional feedback, as opposed to doing it from a standpoint that might be considered nasty or rude. If you were going to coach someone or give someone some tools to become more assertive, what might they be able to do, Nick, to put into practice?
So I think that one of the reasons that we can struggle at times to define assertiveness, why people can struggle with it a little bit as a concept, is because what we try to do is think of it in a way that enables us to apply it to any situation. And that, I think, is maybe not the way to approach it. It's actually, to understand any behavior, you have to look at the context in which it's occurring. So, and what you've said there, that's a great example of that. So I've talked about the classic example of being assertive with one's boss who's trying to give you too much to do. But what you just said is another way in which assertiveness can work. So giving feedback, for example, to a peer or to a supervisee. And usually this comes up when we're talking about feedback that is about that person doing better. So maybe someone isn't meeting expectations, and now we have to, in a supportive but assertive way, give some kind of feedback there. So I think that if you're looking at, so firstly, I would say look at the specific situation in which assertive behavior is required. That would be step number one, so that what you end up doing is appropriate to that situation. Two, practice it. So one of the best things that we can do, and we know that if we're looking to change our behavior in some way, if we want to learn a new way of communicating with someone, then practicing it is one of the best ways to do that. And I've done this with other practitioners. So one of the things I do is supervise other behavior consultants, and I've worked with people helping them develop their assertiveness skills. And we've always started from a specific situation. So that's the first step. And then it is to practice it in a role play situation. Now, role play are two words that strike fear into the heart of most people. But what you're trying to do, the reason that you're role playing these things rather than just reciting it in your head, rather than just saying it to an empty room, is that the best practice for any situation is to make the practice as close to that situation. So someone training for 100 meters doesn't just lift weights and jog. They will run 100 meters regularly. So you want to make the situation as close as it possibly can be to real life.
So you're talking about modelling and
Yeah.
you know, practice and really become attuned to being able to operate in that way. I think that's really, really useful information, Nick. Thank you. So that's the end of this video with the Success Mindset YouTube channel. Thank you once again to our collaborator, Nick, today. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
And we will see you next time. So go out there, execute what you need to do and make your life a masterpiece, my friends. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.